أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم وجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I'd like to add that everyone's well today and that you had a good weekend and week before this, etc. And uh, and I hope that the class is fruitful as well. Um, in our last lesson, we just rounded up this Sarsagir. We went through all of the words that we were going to do for homework. We went through all of them and their meanings, etc. And then we moved on to the first scale in the Mazeedfeehi, which is actually the second of our scales because the first scale is not Mazeedfeehi. We said the third scale is Thulathi Mujarrad. It only has 3 root letters. The first word is comprised of only the 3 root letters. From there, we moved on to the concept of al-Mazeedfeehi, al-Mazeedfeehi, and we said that these scales from 2 until 10, and even some other scales, they are referred to as al-Mazeedfeehi because there is an increase in them. Instead of being simply the 3 root letters, there is an additional letter somewhere. Right? And the one that we did last week, the second scale, the additional letter comes in by having the second root letter repeated. How is that second root letter repeated? We just have a shadda placed on it. Right? Is that what we did? I should have asked how you guys are just so that I could hear some voices.
Assalamualaikum Maulana. Yes, that's it.
Assalamualaikum Maulana.
Alaikum salam.
Assalamualaikum Maulana.
Alaikum salam. Tell me, is my sound fine?
Yes, Maulana.
Yes, Maulana.
Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Right. So before we just say our skills, I just wanted to touch on something. Last week, I think it was Sunni who requested from me slides in which we went through the how to identify the root letters. That's correct. Is that correct, eh?
Yes, Maulana.
So Nasreen did send me the reminder, and I looked for it. But I then realized that you didn't actually do that with me. You wouldn't have done it with me. What I did with you is I did with you how to find verbs in the dictionary, verbs specifically.
Maulana, in our story, one of our lessons, you had no, it wasn't a slide. It was you explained it.
Okay. Yeah, then I was mistaken. Then, so what I did is I just sent to Sister Nasreen the page of your Nahu book that explains it, your Nahu textbook. I can't remember. I think it was page number 23 or 12. You see, I have it here somewhere. That I told her to send on to you guys. This page here. Page number 12 is. So in page number 12 of your Nahu, it is an explanation of how to identify root letters for nouns. For verbs, it's actually simpler. I don't know. Well, it depends which perspective you want to look at it from. But for verbs, initially I told you that you must just know your first scale, fa'ala and yaf'alu, and then you'll know the ya, ta, hamza, noon at the beginning is not one of the root letters, and the next three letters will be your root letters. Or if it's past tense, just the first three letters are going to be your root letters. Fa'ala, daraba, kasara, nasara, hasiba, whatever the case may be. The first three letters are your root letters. Or if you have a present tense, yadribuna, you ignore the ya, ta, hamza, noon at the beginning, and then the next three letters are your root letters. That was what we discussed in sarf. It becomes a little bit more challenging now that we're learning new scales, right? As you'll come to see, maybe not in this scale, but in the following one, becomes a little bit more challenging. But the principle remains the same. In sarf, you must just identify the scale that the verb is on. Once you identify the scale that the verb is on, then you will know the position of the root letters. You will know the position of the root letters um, based on the scale itself. Like here we have the scale fa'ala, yufa'ilu. The root letters are still the first three letters. We just know that the one that's repeated in the middle, that is um, that's just the second root letter twice. All right, so you should still basically from in sarf, because you learned all of these forms of the words, you just identify which form of the word I have, and then you identify the root letters like that. But for nouns, it's slightly different. For nouns, you identify the root letters by a process of elimination, right? A process of elimination. So what you do is you look at the beginning of the letter of the word, and then there are certain common extra letters. You eliminate those extra letters at the beginning of the word. Then you look at in the middle of the word, you look for extra letters that are common in the middle of the word, you eliminate them. And then you look at the end of the word, and then you look for um, extra letters that are common at the end of a word, you eliminate them, and what you are left with is going to be your root letters. Just to give you an example on that quickly. Um, if you Can you see this on my screen? If you take the word here, we have some examples. Well, I'm gonna write some examples here. Can you see the table of extra letters? So I'm gonna write some words here. Um, I'm not. These words are not under these categories. I'm just writing words here. Uh, okay. So I just put a whole lot of words on the board. on the screen, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 words. I want you to just take 2 minutes and identify what the root letters are. How are you going to do it? You are going to eliminate the extra letters. What are the extra letters? If I look at the beginning of the word, that should be a hamza thing, right? It actually could be. No. Rather, right, alif or mim at the beginning, right? And obviously, you know as well, al, and then alif, a ya, a wow in the middle. But this is when they are pulling letters. Right? When they are pulling letters. And then una, alif mamduda, ta marbuta, alif maqsura. Yeah, the alif maqsura, yeah, but alif maqsura is also one. Ani ina atun. So just take 2 minutes and try and find out what the root letters are of these words. It's not process of elimination.
What are those three middle words?
I have a kitabun.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. سيارة ناصر معيار مسلمون and عوالم.
Okay, it was just the yas that I couldn't see. No, shukran.
Just take 2 minutes and then let's see. Okay, let's see. The word kitabun. What are the root letters here? Firstly, if I look at the beginning, are there any of the extra letters at the beginning? No. If I look in the middle of the word, are there any of the common extra letters in the middle of the word?
Yeah.
Alif.
Yes,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
alif, right? The pulling sound. So we eliminate that one. And then how many letters am I left with? Only 3.
3.
So I don't have to look any further than that. Kaf, ta, and ba. Those are my root letters. So what about the word sayyaratun? Sayyaratun. Are there any of the extra letters at the beginning?
No, ma'am.
No. What about in the middle of the word?
Alif again.
The alif again. Correct. At the end of the word?
Mabuta.
Buddha.
Ta marbuta. What am I left with?
سيارة.
Seen.
Yara.
Seen yara. Those are my root letters. Nasirun? Easy. What's the root letters?
Nouns.
No extra letters at the beginning. Again, the alif in the middle.
Yes,
And then I
ma'am.
have sad and ra. Now Sarah. Okay, what about the word mi'yarun?
Meme at the beginning.
Meme. So we have at the beginning we have the meme. So include that one. And then
Alif in the middle.
I live in the middle.
alif in the middle. So what are our root letters?
Ain ya ra.
Ain.
Ya ra.
And then yeah. And the ra. Now yeah, I mean that's what it looks like, right? Ain. It looks like ain, yeah, and ra. I want to say that when you have a weak letter as one of the root letters, then it could be any one of the weak letters. Here in this word, actually, just because I know the word, the root letter is actually a vowel. Actually, a vowel. So it's ain waw ra.
Wow, ra.
How would one identify it? I mean, you said it's a weak letter. How would you know which one to use?
Okay, that you will uh, know, right, by knowing the verb form, or you can just check in your dictionary. So mi'yar, the root letters are ain waw ra, right? So you should know what the either what the mastar of the word is, right, or you should know how to pronounce the verb. So here in this case, the verb is awira. Awira, ya'waru. So if I know that it's awira, then, and I'm saying wow, awira, ya'waru, then I know that the root letter is a wow. Or if I just know where the word comes from, mi'yar, that it comes from, let me just think quickly, does it come from awar? No, awar is blindness. I just checked in the dictionary. Actually, it does come from ain yara. It does come from ain yara. However, it's a bit confusing because there is one of the forms, ta'wir, ta'wir, and the second bab from ain waw ra also has to do with measuring. But how you'll have to check is basically you use a process of elimination to identify the root letters. When you see that you are left with a weak letter there, then it could potentially be either one of the two, and then you just go check your dictionary. Right? So you're going to check up by process of elimination the root with a wow and the root with a ya. Right? Okay. Now the next word, muslimuna. What's the root letters over there?
Sin lam mim.
Sin,
Sin, lam, mim.
lam, and
Saying
mim.
lam.
I identified it. I eliminated the mim at the beginning, and I eliminated the una at the end, and I'm left with sin, lam, mim. And those are the root letters. What about the word awalimu? This one's a little bit more tricky. So there's none of the root letters, none of the extra letters at the beginning. So we leave that. What about in the middle of the word? The alif is obvious, right? But now I'm still left with 4 letters, and I don't have any one of the things at the end. So possibly another one in the middle. The weakest letter that I have is this wow, so that would be eliminated. All right, that would be eliminated. I'm left with Ain, Lam, Mim. Those are my root letters. So how do you find the root letters? By a process of elimination. Eliminate extra letters at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. What you're left with are your root letters. That's for nouns. Right? When you find a weak letter there, it could go. It could be a wow or a yeah in the middle. You just have to, yeah, you have to check. Right, and then for verbs, we said you must simply know your verb forms. That's the easiest way to explain it. Know your verb forms and then identify what the extra letters are on that verb form. And again, by elimination, you will identify what the root letters are. Or you can simply just say, I know which scale it's on. I know the basic word in that scale, and then I just basically pick out where the root letters are supposed to be on that scale. Right? Does that answer the question?
Yes, shukran Mulana.
Shukran,
One. So now, before we start, let's just say our scales again quickly. The two scales that we learned, going across. Right? So fa'ala, everybody. 1, 2, 3, go. فعل يفعل فعل فاعل مفعول افعل لا تفعل. One more time. فعل يفعل فعل فاعل مفعول افعل لا تفعل. Right. Then last week we went through the second scale, and what I want you to do with me now is to say that scale with me, right? You can say the scale with me, ask, and then we'll go through each of the words that we had for homework, and I'll just tell you a bit more information about the scale. Right. 1, 2, 3, go. Bismillah. فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. Again. فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. Again. فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. Right. Well, are there any questions on this before we go through the words we did for homework? No. Okay. Before we go through the homework, actually, right? There were like 2 pages of words here that you're supposed to fill out those scales for. Before we go through that homework, I want you to, you can check on this page. I think this page would have been given to you. The qualities and frequencies of these abwab in the Quran. Right? So if you look, the first bab, scale, whenever we want to say what scale something's on, we usually just say the first word because that identifies for you which scale it's on the fa'ala scale. And when I say on the fa'ala, on the fa'ala scale, I mean it could be on the scale of fa'ala, hasiba, karuma, nasara, daraba, sami'a, any one of those, right? On the fa'ala scale, just the first verb form. All of those form part of the first verb form, right? There's 1,200 Oh, no, sorry, 12,347 verbs in the Quran. Why? There's other word forms from that scale that are also in the Quran. So this is just 12,347 verb forms on that scale. Then we have the second scale, the one we're busy with now. Right? Fa'ala, the fa'ala scale. How does it go? Fa'ala, yufa'ilu, taf'ilan, mufa'ilun, mufa'alun, fa'il, la tufa'il. Right? So from the second scale, there are 1,300 occurrences of it in the Quran. Not in the form fa'ala, basically that scale with any set of root letters, etc. Right? There are 1,300 occurrences of it in the Quran. Now we want to look at, and whether the occurrences are just there for like motivation. Okay, if you learn the scale, you will have access to understanding another 1,300 words in the Quran. But yeah, that's just an extra piece of information. What I actually want to look at here is what every single bab from the second bab, right? All of them have certain functions, right? What I mean by that, usually people call them the khasa'is of the abwab, the qualities, the special qualities of the scales. But each scale, its meaning changes in a somewhat uniform way. But sometimes there's options to how it changes, right? Like here you can see for the second bab, it changes the meaning in one of four ways. Changes the meaning in one of four ways. Now, knowing this doesn't free you of the need to have to use your dictionary or to come across vocabularies in text. But what it does allow you to do is it allows you to have just a framework of what kind of meanings am I looking for in this word. And sometimes that does absolve you of the need to go back to dictionary. If you know the imagery attached to a root letter, and then you know how that word sounds on the second bab or on one of the other babs, and you know the qualities of the bab that the word is on, then sometimes you can just understand the word from that. So what are the qualities of the second bab? We have four here, right? At times, and this is probably the most common one, it is for causality, right? Or for causation rather. So if a word on the first bab means to do something, then on the second bab, it would often mean to cause that thing to happen. And here we have an example in the form nazzala. Nazzala. Nazala on the first bab means to descend, to go down. Nazala means to descend, to go down. Nazzala on the second bab means to cause something to go down. To cause something to go down. To make something go down. Right? So that's the first quality of the second bab. And there's many other examples. One word that's just coming to my mind now is, for example, the word nadara. Nadara means to be bright. Nadara means to illuminate, to make something bright. Yeah, so the first quality is causality. The second quality is intensification. If you think about the first bab, here we have the form qattala. If you think about the first form, of that root letter, it's qatala. What does qatala mean?
Kill.
Qatala means to kill, right? Here we have the form qatala. What does it mean? Qatala still means to kill, but it just means to kill violently, to massacre. Right? It's not necessarily saying to cause someone to kill someone else. No, it's just intensification of the action. How are you going to know exactly? You're going to know through actually coming across the word in action, or you're going to know by checking the dictionary.
Well, I know will all of them have the same quality to say, for example, fataha will on the second verb will also be now intensified. Fataha. How is that going to be to open?
Yeah, so I mean, fataha wouldn't actually really have it wouldn't have an intensified meaning over there.
Okay, so it's not
But
necessary to have all of those four qualities.
no, it doesn't have to have all.
Okay.
It will generally have one of the four qualities.
Okay.
So I actually think fataha is as the third one. So fataha on the first verb, or rather, the third quality is that sometimes it will have the same meaning as the first verb. Will have the same meaning as the first verb. So here we have the example here, badala. Badala means to change. Badala also means to change. Badala means to change. Badala also means to change. And then the fourth quality we have here is that it will have a completely new meaning. That the verb on the first verb means one thing. Like here we have the example, sakhir or sakhira. Sakhira means to mock. Then the verb sakhara on the second verb means to subjugate, or to subject one thing to something else. So it's a completely different meaning. There will oftentimes be a relationship between the meaning. There will often be a relationship between the meanings, but like the meaning of the second verb is connected to the imagery of the word, but it has like a very different meaning. I can give you another example of that. For example, where it's a new meaning, but it's also it's still related. For example, the word sabbaha. Sabbaha. What does that mean in the first verb? Sibaha comes from it. Sabaha means to swim. Sabaha yasbahu means to swim. Then on the second verb, sabbaha yusabbihu tasbihan means what? It means to praise or glorify or extol the perfection of Allah. To make tasbih. So I mean, oops. One may ask, what is the relationship between the two? Well, the relationship between the two is that the idea of the first verb, sabaha yasbahu, has to do with swimming, which is to like maintain a distance above or aloof of, to, you know, when you, and also to move away. So when you're swimming, you're remaining aloft in the water and you are moving away. Whereas sabbaha has the idea of proclaiming perfection of Allah. And it has that imagery of saying that Allah is not physically in terms of space, but Allah is aloof of all deficiencies. All deficiencies are distance from Allah. But essentially, if I were to just translate it, it would translate as to praise or to glorify or to proclaim perfection. Right? So the fourth quality that it could have a new meaning. There will be, like I said, oftentimes there will be a relationship between meanings, but it can also just have a new meaning. So those are the four qualities. Now we can go through some of what we had for homework. We'll just do maybe 2 or 3 of them, and then we'll leave the rest of the homework for next week, inshallah, and I'm going to assign you some more homework. Okay, so let's look. We have the scale nazzala. Everybody say that with me. Nazzala, yunazzilu, tanzilan, munazzilun, munazzalun, nazzil, la tunazzil. Again, nazzala, yunazzilu, tanzilan, munazzilun, munazzalun, nazzil, la tunazzil. If I take the word munazzil, what would that mean? One who sends down. Munazzilun. Okay, what about the word munazzalun?
Entity that sent down.
A thing that is sent down. Like we can say of the Quran is munazzal, it was revealed. Munazzalun. Okay, next word. Kadhaba, everybody. Kadhaba. Yukadhibu. Takdhiban. Mukadhibun. Mukadhabun. Kadhib. La tukadhib. Again. كذب يكذب تكذيبا مكذب مكذب كذب لا تكذب. كذب means to deny. So if I take the word يكذبون, what will that mean? يكذبون.
He is denying.
That will be يكذبون.
No,
what
they.
do I say? يكذبون. They,
Denying.
many
They,
males denied. Right? Okay. What if I say كذب?
Deny.
Come on, just deny. Let's do one more. سبح. Everybody. سبح. يسبح. تسبيحا. مسبح. مسبح. سبح. لا تسبح. Again. سبح. يسبح. تسبيحا. مسبح. مسبح. سبح. لا تسبح. سبح. يسبح means to praise. So if I say, what is a musabbih? Musabbihun.
A praiser.
Is one who praises. And a musabbahun,
The one being praised.
the one being praised. Brilliant. Okay. So that's our second bab. What I want you to do for homework now is, right? Go to this page. You should have this page, Al-Mazeedfeehi from the Quran. The first page is examples of form 2. So what we have here is ayat or parts of ayat from the Quran that have words on the second bab in them. What I want you to do is, I want you to fill in these 3 columns: babun, naw'un, and translation. What do these words mean? The first word, bab, you must tell me which bab the word is on. It's obvious. It's obvious because this whole thing is about form 2, bab 2. So all of these words are going to be on form 2. Let's just fill that in there. It's just so that you get accustomed to the sound of the words and which bab that word comes from. Then I want you to fill in the naw' of the word. What do I mean by naw' of the word? I know, I mean, in which column on that Sarf Saghir will you find this? Is this the past tense, fi'al madi? Is it the present tense, fi'al mudari'? Is it the ismul fa'il? Is it the ismul maf'ul? Is it the masdar? Is it the amr or is it the nahi? Right? Um, so you can fill that in the column naw'un. And yeah, and then in the last column, I want you to give me the translation of that word. So how are you going to find the translation? Either it's one of the words in our list that we've already covered, right? Either it's one of the words that we covered in this list already, or it's not one of those words, and I think most of them actually are those words. But if there's any word that we haven't covered there, then you should now be able to find it in your dictionary. How will you find it? You identify the root letters. You go to those root letters in your dictionary. You find the verb, which is the first word, right? And then in that entry, you look for the Roman numeral 2. I'll give you an example. So, okay, yeah. For example, um, if I'm looking for the word nasara, for example, yeah, I have the verb. I find the root letters nun, sad, ra, tells me how to pronounce it on the first bab, nasara, yansuru. But I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for the second bab, nasara, yunassiru, tansiran. So I go and look in this entry, in this very first entry, until I find this Roman numeral 2. I see it over there. The meaning after that tells me what it means on the second bab. Like you can see, Nasara here means to Christianize or to convert to Christianity. So that would be the meaning of Nasara, yunassiru tansiran.
Well, does all verbs follow go all on the same or different verbs? Because sometimes I looked in the dictionary, there's sometimes the first Roman numeral is maybe number 4 and number 5. So it misses
Right.
out 2, 3.
So not all verbs have used meanings on all the above. Right? Sometimes you can, a word is not generally used on that bab, but you can kind of force a meaning. But generally, they don't have meanings on all the babs. Like here you can see this word has a meaning on bab 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 10. But it doesn't have a meaning on bab 4, bab 8, and bab 4 and bab 9. Doesn't have meanings on those. So it doesn't have to have a meaning on all of the babs. Right, so what you do for homework is take that page, Al-Mazeedfeehi from the Quran, and complete the first page. Al-Mazeedfeehi from the Quran, form 2. You fill in the bab. I told you that's obvious. It's all bab 2. The no, you must identify which type of word it is on the scale, and then give me the translation of that word. And most of these words are from the words that you had to have done for homework last week. And if you're not completed with that, then do that for homework as well. We're in there for now. وجزاكم khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mawlana Yazid is with us, and Mawlana Yazid, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I've made you host. I'm going to be off now. Is that fine?